Karakia. Tu tawa mai e ronga, tu tawa mai e raro, tu tawa mai e roto, tu tawa mai e waho, kia tau mai te mauri tū, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haunie, huie, tai kie. Before apologies, I'd like to welcome two members here of the Napier City Council Youth Council. Welcome, and I'd like to ask Councillor McGrath to introduce you.
Yes, just through the chair. Today, being good old school holidays, we've been able to get two of our youth councillors along, and we have Zara from Napier Girls High School and Tom from Taradale High representing the Youth Council today in our meeting, and perhaps look forward to their input.
Excellent. Well, welcome. And if you would like to ask any questions in the course of our discussions or join in the discussion, you're very welcome. You won't be able to vote, but we would welcome your input if you feel so moved. Apologies. Councillor Mawson's apology for lateness. And the Chief Executive is attending via Zoom. Are there any other apologies? Doesn't look like it. All those that, accepting, would somebody like to move to accept those apologies? Thank you, Councillor Price, Deputy Mayor Brosnan. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those against say no. Conflicts of interest. No conflicts of interest. There's no public forum. Are there any announcements by the Mayor? I have a couple of announcements. Just a reminder to the public that our long-term plan is out there for consultation until the 12th of May. So we urge you please to have a look at that and make your submissions before that deadline. Tonight there is an LTP community meeting at the War Memorial between 6 and 7 p.m. and members of the public are very welcome to attend that and find out a bit more about our long-term plan. Now, just procedurally, I will be progressing through the open agenda of the Napier People and Places Committee, and instead of moving into public excluded straight away, I'll ask Councillor Taylor to then take the chair for the Napier Prosperous Napier Committee open agenda, and then we will move into public excluded. Are there any announcements by the management? Okay. Notification of minor matters? No. Right, I'd like somebody to move, please, the confirmation of the minutes of the Napier People and Places Committee on the Thursday, the 18th of March 2021 be taken as a true and accurate record of the meeting. Is there a mover? Thank you, Councillor Wright. Thank you, Councillor Crystal. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those against say no. Thank you. Right, our first item is the Napier Social Monitor Report, and I'd like to ask Michelle Greig, Senior Advisor Policy, to talk to us about that. Thank you, Michelle. And Virgil Troy from SIL. Thank you.
This is, through the chair, this is Natalia from SIL.
Welcome. The floor is yours.
Morena koutou, thank you, Madam Chair, Mayor and councillors for having us here to talk to this paper, which is giving you an overview of a social monitor survey that was completed in August-September last year. This is a survey that the council has done for some years now, and in 2019 we reviewed it and decided to start doing it annually so that we could get a good picture of what our community is experiencing and their feedback on various social wellbeing issues. So it's an annual survey of about 450 residents in the community, which is a representative sample of our community, aged 18 and over, so a cross-section of the population. And we use a number of methods, or Sil Research use a number of methods to encourage people to do the survey. So they do some phone surveys, post out some survey forms, and we promote the survey on social media links and online. And that's improved representativeness of the survey. We reviewed the questionnaire in 2019 when we revamped it, the survey, to focus on the 4 wellbeings in particular, going forward to get a good understanding and measurement of community wellbeing. And the 2019 monitor provides a baseline for us going forward, so we're now doing these surveys annually. Just as a matter of interest, and this was distributed to you, and I think during level 3 of lockdown, we did a COVID wellbeing survey, which was sent out to the council at that time. So there's some results in this survey that compare to that survey as well. So we've got question areas in the survey around social connection, diversity, accessibility, wellbeing, community wellbeing, mental wellbeing, and overall quality of life. We also present ward information for the council to consider, and where there's statistically significant differences between wards, these are noted in the report. And we also ask our respondents to comment on improvements in the city, and in 2020 the survey people commented that they wanted some improvements around safety, policing and crime compared to fixing the water, which came through in the previous year. So just a few highlights from this year's survey. We've had improvements overall in quality of life, which is measured through what we call a social index measure. Improvements overall in mental wellbeing, social connections, people having friends, neighbours, relatives they can count on. Improvements in self-reported health, and reduced concern about the COVID situation. However, there have been some areas which have measured have decreased over time, so there's more people likely to feel unsafe, and impacts of COVID-19 on people's quality of life there has been some impacts around those. Some of those impacts were positive in terms of improved social connections, but definitely there are some negatives. And you can see the detailed information in the paper that's attached and available online. We have outlined in there also that we've got a plan for distribution of the information once it goes through council and it's accepted by council. We're going to make this available, this report available on our website, as we do every year. We'll be sending it out to partner agencies in the Safer Napier program, other council departments internally, and through our community network, so a lot of NGOs and community organisations for their information. And the next monitor will be done in August, September this year, 2021. So Virgil, would you like to add anything to that?
Through the chair, I guess the biggest thing to be mindful of when reviewing this particular piece of research is the time that it's actually conducted in. So I went online because as I was rereading through everything the last couple of days, had to refresh my own memory as to what had happened preceding that and during the process that we went through in terms of timeline to collect the data. So I went on to the COVID-19 alert level system history, and pretty much, if you think back, the whole country went into lockdown on the 25th of March, and that continued right the way through till the 27th of April when we came out at alert level 3. So although we were allowed out of our houses and we were able to buy KFC, there was still some significant restrictions on movement, etc. That's shortly after that period is when, as Michelle mentioned, we conducted an initial COVID-19 survey just to get a feel of what had actually happened and how people had felt. Then when we undertook this, pretty much we started data collection on the 11th of August, and that was the day that 4 new cases of COVID were identified, and then we all went back down to alert level 2 and 3 again. So during the data collection process, we had just emerged from the first lockdown where everyone was breathing a sigh of relief and maybe life was returning to normal. Then just as we're collecting the data, another shake that, oh no, this thing hasn't gone away, everyone battened down the hatches again. So that's the context in which it was undertaken. So when you read through it, there's almost this sense of elation that we're all still safe. and that things aren't as bad as they could be. And that has a direct measure or a direct impact on how people respond to research at that time. So what we have found in subsequent research moving away from that and getting more into the sense of normality is things are slightly different. So when you read it, you have to sort of think back on what actually was going on at that time. So we were all breathing a collective sigh of relief. So the results reflect that people believe that things weren't as bad as perhaps they could have been. So that does have an impact on that.
Very interesting.
Happy to take questions.
Okay, any questions? Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Kia ora, thank you for the report. One of the things that's, I suppose, particularly topical is the feeling of safe in Napier. And I was just wondering if you could check my maths on the ratings for feeling unsafe in Napier. That increased, and it was by over 30%. If I take the numbers of 13 to 17% of people feeling unsafe, that difference is an increase of 31%. And I suppose I'm interested in whether the questions asked any qualitative the survey asked any qualitative questions in that space, and what sort of themes you were seeing with quite a dramatic increase there.
Okay, so through the chair, I'll ask Natalia just to speak to that.
So in this particular research, we haven't asked open-ended comments to ask about safety perceptions, but before that, straight after lockdown, we actually included safety questions as well, and we prompted the community to provide their feedback why they're feeling unsafe in Napier. So we tried to collect some unprompted responses, and generally for people who rated lower on the scale, feeling safe, so ratings 1 and 2, they generally said about situation in Napier when they felt unsafe going out at night, and the perceived increase of crime activity and feeling safely at public spaces.
Thank you.
Yes, through the chair, that's detailed in the report as well, that we ask people, do you feel safe in your neighbourhood, going out at night in town, in your home, using public transport, making online transactions. So yeah, there's a bit of detail there that you can look at.
Yes, I saw that. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, I have two questions, if I may. One is the survey results indicate 450 people participated. Did all 450 of those complete the entire survey?
Yes.
Yes.
Through the chair, yes, they did.
Okay, and secondly, we're all about community, so I was quite pleased to see the increased result in people feeling connected. Is there any more contextual data around that to indicate to us why they're feeling more connected, or what mechanisms are making them feel more connected?
Through the chair, I'll just answer that in two ways. I'll ask Natalia to chime in as well. Anecdotally, as I mentioned before, when you look at the country, the nation as a whole, coming out of a second lockdown during the collection, well, not so much a lockdown like the first one, but restrictions when we collected the data here. A lot of the feedback that we have received anecdotally from this and other research suggests that people felt more connected to those around them, that there was a greater sense of community, of having been through this thing together as a group rather than as individuals. And I guess the government's messages on, be kind and, be kind to others. So that had an impact on that. Any more information?
Yeah, I agree with Virgil. So earlier survey we conducted straight after the lockdown showed that apart from negative impacts of the pandemic and the general lockdown, there were positive outcomes as well, and people named more time with their family, connected with their relatives and friends. It doesn't have to be face-to-face connection. There was an increase in online in media communication as well. So after that, when we started the data collection for Social Monitor for 2020, we anticipated that probably the sense of neighborhood support would be slightly greater because of that.
Right, Councillor Crystal, please.
Through the chair, just one of the positive things that I noted was that 20% of residents said they'd increased their walking and cycling, which is quite a large proportion. And I guess it'll be interesting to see in the next survey if that has been maintained. That is something that's, quite significant, really.
Through the chair, that is something that we picked up in this and other research, is that people have more time and therefore were being more physically active or doing things that improve their general sense of well-being within the confines of what they could actually do. And that is a lot of the feedback that we got from this and other research, people coming out of it, doing a bit more exercise, etc. But as you say, whether that continues, it'll be interesting to find out next time.
So just about that, was that a reflection of the COVID, the lockdown, how people got out and exercised more? So it may not be maintained, but we don't know. Councillor Crown.
Kia ora through the chair. I just have a couple of questions, if I may. The first is around the methodology and the sample size and the fact that I think it said something about it was kind of a 95% accuracy based on the formula that you apply to that. Are we hitting the same people? I know it's anonymous, but are we hitting the same people and therefore getting their opinion and rating when we're doing these surveys? Or what provision is in place to ensure that we're covering, the PO that we have around community, ethnicity and area?
Through the chair, I'll have Natalia answer that. Good question.
So when it comes to methodology for a survey that we conduct around that period of time, in August and September, we sample without replacement. It means we don't select the same person twice. We also have certain techniques to check the final data set for duplicates. Obviously, two people from the same household can participate, but when we see the same person, because we ask for quality control details to provide their names and phone details, and if we see that these results are completely the same, we can say that that was the same person, same name, same surname, and same contact details. So obviously we use only one response from that person, usually the latest one, because the latest one is the completed response. Sometimes people start doing the survey, but they don't have time, so they quit and they return later. So we use the latest response, the fullest one.
Okay, cool, thank you. And just my second question was around the emergency management rating. It seemed quite low to me, under 50%. I was wondering how that compares to other regions or other research that you've carried out.
So we've noticed no significant increase or decrease in terms of ratings in relation to civil defence management, and that's pretty much what we saw across different council areas. So people seem to rate it the same as last year, even though sometimes through open-ended comments you can see that people reflected on messages they saw from the council in a positive way, that council actually communicated through a really difficult period that we've experienced.
So no change in general. However, do other areas have a better baseline than us, I suppose? What's the comparison there?
Do we collect that data across the country as part of our benchmarking?
We collect that data for some other councils as well. Yeah, so on an annual basis, not across the whole.
So anecdotally, is it on par?
On par, yes.
It's on par, anecdotally, yeah.
Thank you.
Through the chair, just to add to that, I think it would be fair to say as well that lots of people out there don't really realise council's involvement in civil defence. They see the civil defence group and logo and whatnot when there's an emergency situation. So it would be fair to say that that result is not unexpected.
Mayor Kirsten, Mayor Wise, your question.
Thank you, through the chair. I note that the accessibility finding, we've had a decrease from 63 to 60%. Could you just share with us some additional detail around actually what types of questions were asked in that category? And because accessibility obviously can relate to some quite different things that we're seeking to have information on.
Through the chair, Mayor-wise, I'll ask Natalia to respond to that.
So all our questions are statement-based. So when you see the chart, we are talking about easy to get around Napier. Napier's facility are easy accessible, and Napier is a disability-friendly city. So they are statements, and we ask the community to rate them on a scale from 1 to 5, where 1 is strongly disagree and 5 is strongly agree. So when we provide a rating, it's an aggregated positive ratings of 4 and 5 combined together. So we are talking about general moving around, so get around Napier. It includes roads and public transport, general perception of getting around the city, and more specifically about facilities and being disability friendly.
So if you look at that initial page, which is 22 on the next one, we have categorised some open-ended responses in relation to that. So we've said of those people that said that it's easy to get around, what were the main reasons? And of those that said that it's not easy to get around, what were those reasons again? So if you look at the positivity, convenience, the city layout, good roads, no problems in general, it's good. I have a car, drive depends on my availability. So those tend to be positive factors, and areas which would have people give maybe a slightly more negative response would be bus service, which I know is not the responsibility of the Napier City Council, issues of car parking, which tends to come up in other research that we do as well, and busy roads and traffic getting worse, etc., as obviously more people use vehicles and the city becomes more congested.
Thank you.
Could I just carry on with that question? In the actual report, does it have a breakdown in ages as far as accessibility is concerned, to see whether there are any difference with younger people and older people and how they rank the accessibility in the city?
Through the chair, I'll answer this one. Can't give you all the limelight. But basically, when we run the analysis, we check every single response in relation to any ward differences or any demographic differences, and where they are statistically significant. In other words, they pop up as this particular region or this particular ward or this particular age demographic is above or below what the average is, then we mention it in the report. So if it's not mentioned in the report, then you can be fairly sure that it's fairly consistent across wards and it's consistent across age demographics. Would that be fair to say?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions? I just have one of Michelle Grigg, if you don't mind. This is really important information, and it's great to see it on the table here and us all having a look at it. How is it going to be used? How is it going to be fed into our planning? And are there any things here that we need to do better that will come out of this report and will be followed up?
Thank you, Chair. As I said, we will be distributing this to other sections in council. So, for example, one that's been highlighted is through roading and infrastructure, just looking at how are the roads suiting residents, footpaths, etc. So we'll be distributing it to other parts of council to see what they can pick up from this. And areas for improvement going forward. There's also information in here that we can build on, the positives. And one of those areas, just thinking off the top of my head, is around connections and social connections, which we've been promoting through our Safe for Napier program, which is, looking out for your neighbour, checking in on your neighbour. So really building on the positives that came out of lockdown, where people had that opportunity to get to know people in their neighbourhood. So this information reinforces some of what we're doing, but also, as you say, can give some guidance and direction for other parts of council as where we need to focus efforts. Yeah.
Councillor Tapane.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. So my first one, and I apologise if you've already answered this, guys, and I didn't pick it up. But I was just talking with Councillor Simpson, and at the timeframes and those contextual references you provided earlier on, is the survey fixed in its schedule, or is there a supporting way to identify how we might get a better impression of the shocks that happen in our community, such as the lockdown, such as the flood, etc., etc. Where would we find the ability to get data on those types of impacts?
Kia ora through the chair. Thank you for your question. The COVID wellbeing survey that we did is a classic case in point where that wasn't planned, and we decided, that potentially had a big impact on our community, so we wanted to try and measure that. So that was an instance where we developed that survey especially to respond to that situation. So there is the opportunity to do that. This is kind of our point in time annually, but there's definitely scope to do responsive surveys depending on what's happening in the community.
So based on, through you, Madam Chair, so based on that initiative around COVID, will we be seeing a report at some stage on the flood impacts for an impression from that event?
Order through the chair. We didn't do one post-flood,
Okay.
and that's a discussion that we could have about, how the decision is made going forward as to when these surveys are done to respond to issues.
And one final question, which I may, and I don't know if you'll have the answer. This is outside of the report itself directly. It's on the fringe of what you do, but it has to do with the shared activity that we as a council are doing with Massey University around the analytics of social data within Napier City and what patterns we might be able to derive from that. And so really, I'd love to get an update or a report on where that's at, not necessarily today, so it's a follow-up more than anything else. And I'll leave you and Natasha to touch base on where we are on that and whether it's finished or still going.
Perhaps that could be an action point for a future discussion, please.
Thank you.
Right, are there any other questions? All right, thank you very much, especially Virgil and Natalia. Would somebody like to move the officer's recommendation, please? The Napier People and Places Committee received the Napier Social Monitor Report 2020. Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Crystal. Is there any discussion? All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
All those against say no. Thank you very much, especially Natalia and Virgil. And I think, Michelle, you're staying in the hot seat.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the Safer Napier program, which Michelle and Natasha Napier will be speaking to. So thank you very much. I hope there will be a link on the Facebook page for that, please. Thank you very much. Safer Napier program annual update. Over to you.
Kia ora. Thank you again, Madam Chair, councillors, for having us here to speak to this paper. Just out of interest, we're handing out a copy of our latest newsletter from the program, so you're welcome to have a read of that. So you'll know a lot about Safer Napier already. This is a program that's been around for some years, I think since 2009, is it? Yeah. And we're well recognised nationally through what we do, and there's a number of councils and other communities around New Zealand who run safe community programs such as this. So I'm here speaking on behalf of my colleague Rebecca Peterson, who can't join us today, but who's picking up management of the Safer Napier program going forward. So firstly, I'd like to start with some acknowledgements, and first and foremost is to our Safer Napier partners, our strategic group of 16 different agencies and organisations, including police, Foreign Emergency New Zealand, Civil Defence, Kāinga Ora, Te Kupenga Hauora, and the list goes on. And also acknowledging our 43 signatory organisations who work alongside us on this collaborative program of work. So the purpose of this paper is really to give you an annual update of what we've been doing as a collaboration, some of the highlights, things we've been working on, and this information is for the year ended June 2020, so it is a little bit late, but we can put that down to COVID and floods. So firstly, some background. As you know, we became accredited some time ago and re-accredited in 2015, and we're looking to re-accredit again later this year, which we're very excited about. And the Safe Communities model essentially recognises that safety is a universal concern and a responsibility of all. It's a collaborative way of working, and the vision that we have for the program is that Napier is a safe and healthy city. And under that, we've identified priority areas. So this is a program that doesn't just focus on crime prevention. It also focuses on reducing injuries in our home and our workplace and the community, road safety, reducing crashes on our roads, looking after pedestrians and cyclists, community resilience, which is around preparedness for an emergency, connections in your neighbourhood, etc., and addiction-related harm, and this includes things like alcohol and gambling. And we've also identified Safe for Napier as being supported through the long-term plan, which we're grateful for having. So the summary for the year does highlight a few signature projects that we have in the program. Some of these include Safe as Houses. Another one that I mentioned in the discussion on the previous paper is our Look Out for Your Neighbour campaign. We've also had a big focus on hill hosts, which is in response to possible mass evacuation in a large tsunami and earthquake event to the hill. Our full annual report is on the website, and it lists a number of projects that fall under the umbrella of Safe for Napier. And one of the other highlights of the program was the way that the various agencies that are involved in the program and Safe for Napier actually worked together on the welfare response for COVID-19, and having that collaboration and those connections with agencies was critical in being able to pull together and do some of that work across agencies during that time. We're always keen to get our information out about what the program's doing, so we produce an annual summary of highlights which gets promoted in the community newspaper. We've started producing newsletters. This is the second edition, which come out every quarter. And all of our reporting and planning documents, which follow the national guidance for this kaupapa, are available on our website. I think I'll leave it there. Any questions, we're welcome to take them.
No questions? Sorry, Mayor Wise.
Through the chair, and probably more of a comment than a question, but I just note that we are the primary funder for this program, which obviously when you look at what the key sort of objectives are, and a lot of that is far beyond our mandate, it concerns me that we are at risk of not having the support from a financial perspective from our organisations that partner us with this. And to turn it into a question, I guess, is there any likelihood that we will receive some funding from those other organisations that are involved in the program?
Through the chair, I can respond to that. So from time to time, we have gone out to our partner agencies and sought any contributions that they are able to make to the program. I guess the difficulty is a lot of the local agencies, in particular, that are involved, are service provision end of agencies in terms of a regional aspect. So their funding is often, into the front line and into the service areas. So it's been difficult for them to provide funding to this program, but I would say that we have had really good support for particular projects that are able to be linked with their objectives more strongly than the administration of a program such as this. And we do appreciate that they do provide staff time as an in-kind contribution, and it is one of the few programs, I think, in terms of a collaborative program where it has been very well supported and in a consistent way over a number of years. And we're impressed with the fact that we do get that really good support on the projects and the program itself from the agencies. But in saying that, there's never a reason not to ask in the future. Yes.
Councillor Simpson.
More or less as a follow-up, actually, because there's a lot of really good work done by this group, and their aspirations for where our community should be around safety and security are quite incremental in getting to the place where people need to be. There's a bit of concern around public safety at the moment. But my question really, which leads on around the collaboration and things, you've got a newsletter that you've produced. How is that newsletter being circulated so that people become more aware of the activities of the group? And then does that then lead on to the opportunity to attract funding from other sources to, if we're communicating well, if we're demonstrating good outcomes, that we can't get financial support from other sources rather than just the member organisation. So back to my question, which is really how has this newsletter been circulated and made available?
Thank you for the question, through the chair. Yes, we identified the need to bring about this newsletter primarily to let our partner organisations know more about what we're doing, because they don't work with us necessarily on a day-to-day basis. So we have 43 signatories to the program that we wanted to inform more than we have been in the past. So you're right, there's definitely an opportunity there that once we start doing that and demonstrating what we are doing, there's an opportunity going forward in terms of increasing their support.
Just to add to that, in terms of the funding, the framework is this program is part of a national framework, and so some of the funding sources that you traditionally go to, such as the HPA or the Ministry of Health, Police at that national level, are actually providing funding and support to the national body of the safe communities. So that's where we've been able to get project funding, but not necessarily administrative funding. And in the past, which was stopped a couple of years ago, there was funding provided to community programs through that national body. We are about to see a big change with the national body, as they have actually lost their main source of funding, which was through ACC, and so we've been in discussions with them about how the national program will go forward. That may provide an opportunity for local communities to access that national funding in the future more directly.
So just to follow up more specifically about the newsletter, so is there an opportunity for people, first back the bus up, is the newsletter on your website so it's accessible to members of the public to view? And secondly, is there an option for people to subscribe to receive the newsletter?
Through the chair, yes, it's on our website, and we don't have a subscription list as such, but there's definitely the opportunity for people to get in touch and let us know if they'd like a copy. We'll make that clear on the website.
On that, Michelle, does it go out to the Community Network email list?
Kia ora, yes it does.
Cool. Yes, Councillor Tapane.
So just a follow-on question, really, just to confirm from Councillor Simpson's kōrero. Given the great work that your team did around the disability strategy, I'm thinking particularly of our visually impaired members who we've established a comms with. How are we meeting their particular requirements with the newsletter? Or around keeping them informed, full stop?
Kia ora, through the chair. At the moment, we only produce this as an online, Word document. We would need to look at budget involved in the accessible versions and whether or not we produce those. It's definitely something that we could support through the strategy, however.
So just to add to that through the chair, so we have started off in terms of the accessible formats with key council documents. So I think it's fair to say that we're taking a phased approach as we bring in more and more accessibility into our documents and our communications. So that would definitely be a phase 2 in terms of bringing that through the disability strategy, but certainly the intention is that if we're looking at thinking about the audiences and who really needs to access this information, is to then bring those accessible formats into play.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Yep.
Oh, yes, thank you, Tom.
Is there any focus on vaping through this program? That is a big issue in our schools at the moment, and I think it'd be something which, I'm just curious, is it linked in it at all through this?
Through the chair, thanks Tom, that was a really good question. One of our goals in the program focuses on addiction-related harm, and that includes alcohol, gambling and smoking and vaping. Yes, so council has a smoke-free policy that includes vape-free, and one of the things that we're wanting to do is look at whether that's still current and how we can make sure we strengthen that policy going forward, and that kind of sits under this program as well.
Just to add to that through the chair, I think you raise a really good issue in the sense that when we did do our smoke-free policy originally, vaping was very, very new, and it was, and as it is now, it was seen as an alternative to smoking for existing smokers in terms of how to give up smoking. However, we are aware, and through yourselves, around that vaping is actually the first gateway for young people now. So I think that's a central thing that we need to look at through the review, and we'll certainly be involving the Youth Council in how we do that review. So thank you.
Just a comment from that, Tom, too. I'm wondering, I think the Youth Council is doing a submission to our long-term plan. I know it's not, in there, but that might be something you may wish to add as an issue for, that young people have picked up.
Definitely, yeah. It's a big issue at the moment, and I'm a student rep at Taradale, and it's something I see a lot going on, and I think it's promoted as a safe, healthy alternative to cigarettes, and it really isn't. So I think that's a really good idea.
Excellent. Thank you for your contribution. Right, are there any further questions or comments? Okay, well, if there are none, would somebody like to move the officer's recommendation that the Napier People and Places Committee note the Safe in Napier program update? Councillor Crown, seconded Councillor Brown. Any discussion, comment? All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. Thank you very much. Right, the next item and last item in our open agenda is the Faraday Centre business case, and I'd like to ask Ms Campbell, Director of Community Services, to speak to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bogue. The purpose of this report is for Council to receive the Faraday Centre business case and to note that the future of the Faraday Centre is the subject of a special consultation topic in the draft LTP, which is currently up for consultation. The LTP consultation is seeking feedback from the community on whether to keep the Faraday Centre open until the business case recommendations can be implemented or to close it temporarily. The business case supports Council's preferred option of keeping it open, and the business case will be available to the public during the consultation period so that they may make informed feedback to Council on the future of the Faraday. The summary document is currently online under the supporting documents for the LTP, and the full business case will be made available later today. Council took over operations of the facility in 2019 at the request of the Prebensons, who had been volunteers at the centre for many years. Since then, Council has been investigating options for the ongoing governance and management of the centre going forward. We engaged Habelis business case specialists to carry out a single-stage business case using Treasury's Better Business Case model. The business case identifies key challenges around the building, the service delivered, and the current operating model. In response to these challenges, 3 investment objectives were identified. First, to ensure the Faraday Centre meets the seismic and health and safety standards. Secondly, to develop the Faraday Centre into an attractive destination activity. And thirdly, to ensure the governance and operating model is fit for purpose and sustainable. A full range of options were assessed against these investment objectives to address the challenges, and a preferred option was identified, which is for the Faraday Centre to remain at its current location, for Council to purchase, strengthen and upgrade the building so it is fit for purpose, and that it delivers a range of services from interactive displays to events, functions and education programs. It also recommended that the operations will be governed by an independent trust, receiving an operations grant from the Council further down the track. Happy to take any questions.
Deputy Mayor Brosnan.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I know in the business case, I just had a couple of questions around the proposed subdivision and the acquisition of additional land that's proposed on page 13. I suppose one of my questions was that the additional land that we're proposing to potentially acquire, or as I think the business case said, is our preferred approach to acquire that. It would essentially see a part of that landlocked by obviously the remaining portion of the defence land, and just wondering if it was being negotiated right of access through to that additional land as well.
Through the chair, I'm not sure if I understand where it would be landlocked. It does.
So the parking area at the back that's proposed to be additionally acquired, that's in the diagram on page 13, landlocked by the civil defence land.
Okay, I might.
So, for instance, how would you access the additional land that we're proposing to acquire at the back of Faraday, if not through the civil defence, through the New Zealand Defence property?
I might have to call on Mr. Faulkner to make comment on that. I'm not exactly too sure which part you mean. If you could
Would you
point it
mind
out.
coming up to the mic, please, Mr. Faulkner?
Through the chair, as I understand it, the phase 1 is to acquire the current footprint of the Faraday Centre, and the Defence Force, in initial discussions, quite agreeable to that. While those discussions are occurring, we would try and obtain additional land, but we're just not sure, because it's Crown land, how successful we will be. So number 1 is to acquire the current footprint of the Faraday Centre as phase 1. At that time, we'll try to get additional land, but that could be very difficult. And then, of course, the third phase is to try and acquire the whole site. But once again, there's a lot of water to go under the bridge before that could occur. Does that answer that?
Just a follow up through you, Madam Chair. I understand. Thank you, Brian. That sounds very practical. If counts, the way I suppose it's written on page 13 is that's a preferred approach of ours to acquire the additional land. I suppose what you're saying is it's not necessarily a preferred approach.
By the Defence Force.
Yeah, exactly. No. And just flagging, I assume then that you would be across, if we were successful in obtaining that additional land, that we would also be looking for right of access to it.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions or comments?
Just a comment.
Yes, Councillor.
I'd just like to comment about what an important facility it is for Napier, and that I hope everybody knows about it, and that it's a little bit of a tucked away site. So yeah, very important decision.
I think once the LTP hearings are completed, we will probably get some feedback. Hopefully, it is an item in our LTP consultation. So when we hear that, we'll get a good feel of how the public feels about it and be able to make some decisions then. So are there any other comments? Or yes, Councillor Tapane.
Sorry, through you, Madam Chair. Just following on from Councillor Price, actually. Could you remind me what the hours are for the centre over the school holidays, so that, given it's a consultation item, I'd extend the councillor's suggestion to encouraging family to visit that site over the school holidays, considering it's a part of the LTP consultation document. So get in there, touch a few things, get personal with that space. And just to reiterate the councillor's comments, we've got a collection in the Hawke's Bay and in Napier of small gems that attract people to our region. This is one of those small gems, and so we're interested in retaining it as a part of the city landscape. So kia ora, Councillor Price, and I'd just encourage people, could we get the times for the centre over the school holidays, please?
Through the chair, the usual hours of operation are 9 to 3, Monday, Wednesday, Friday and Saturday, but during the school holidays we're open 6 days a week, 9 till 3. And just further to Councillor Price's comments, over the last 2 years since Council has taken over the operations and through the facility manager and our communications and marketing team, we have raised the profile of the Faraday considerably, and visitation has increased over the last couple of years, and with further investment in marketing and promotion, as per our recommendations, we would see a lot more people coming through the Faraday. And also with the seismic strengthening of the building, we hope to see the return of school visits to the Faraday. Currently, the Ministry of Education prohibits schools visiting earthquake-prone buildings, so that's something we'd like to rectify.
Councillor Simpson.
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, following up on the other comments, I think the public might be surprised when they read the business case or simply take an interest by going and having a look at the museum, how unique this museum is in the New Zealand context. And I think that was one of the surprise findings in the business case, is that sort of there is nowhere else that compares with this museum in New Zealand. So it's a gem, as stated, and it's certainly a good education tool for the youth of our community.
It's very encouraging. Just remember that we are going to be discussing this in our LTP deliberations, so there'll be an opportunity there for people to express their feelings after they've heard what people have said. And perhaps again, seeing we have the Youth Council here, perhaps it might be something that the Youth Council might like to have a look at, go in and have a look at. We'd love to hear feedback on our LTP deliberations in terms of how you experience it. That would feed into our information as well. So are there any other? Yes.
Just through the chair, following on from your comments, I'm just wondering if our 2 Youth Council members have actually been to the Faraday Centre in recent times.
Put them on the spot.
Isn't that really?
No, I haven't, but I have been to similar places before, and they are really important, and I think it would be good for it to be maybe more of an influence on youth and teenagers. Maybe there's an open day or something, because when I think, and I'm sure when other youth think of the Faraday Centre, they think, oh yeah, nah. So I think there could be things done to more focused on the youth, and yeah, more appealing. Yeah.
Well, perhaps if the Youth Council could make a visit there, one of your meetings before for your submissions put together, and give us some feedback on possible improvements even, that would be very helpful.
Yeah.
Right, are there any other questions or comments? Thank you very much for that input. Okay, well, if there are no further questions or comments, would somebody like to move the officer's recommendation that the Napier People and Places Committee receive the Faraday Centre business case for information? Note the business case and summary is published. Note that it's will be published, on the Council's website. And note the business case recommendations will be brought back to Council after the 2031 long-term plan consultation, hearings and adoption. Is there a mover? Thank you, Councillor Simpson. Seconded, Councillor Price. Is there anybody who wants to speak to that? Okay, all those in favour say aye. Aye. Those against say no. Thank you. Well, this part of our meeting is now completed, and I'd just like to call for just a 5-minute break so Councillor Taylor can swap seats and nameplates with me, so that he can proceed with the prosperous Napier Committee meeting. Thank you.